What do you do when a Satanist accosts you on the way to Mass? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is a podcast arm of Very Christie. Very Christie is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at verychristie.com and stjosephsociety.org. All right, gentlemen, I hope you guys are doing well on this Friday, October 17th. This week, I had a plan for a good scriptural lesson, some encouragement for you guys heading into the weekend that was piggybacking on what we talked about last week on the episode. However, I had one of the most bizarre interactions of my entire life last Sunday on my way to church that I want to share with you guys and give you guys kind of some of my thoughts about this. So, last Sunday, okay, let me set the stage for you guys. I live in a small, very idyllic Midwestern town in Northeast Iowa. Okay. Very small, wonderful community, great place. We have a beautiful church in town. And I live in a town that's small enough and where our house is in the middle of town that I can walk or ride my bike everywhere in town. Okay. To the high school, to the store, to church, everywhere. So I walk everywhere. The only place I ever drive is to work and back because that's a couple towns over. But when I get home, everything's on foot. It's wonderful. So every Sunday, I walk to mass so I can pray my rosary. Now, a lot of times my kids, they're always running a little bit behind or something. So sometimes they'll drive. So I'll walk by myself. So I'll, tell the kids, hey, whoever wants to walk with dad, we're gonna pray a rosary on the way to mass this morning. So last Sunday I did that. My 7-year-old took me up on the offer. So he and I left the house about a half hour before mass. It's about a 15-minute walk, a half mile. And started praying our rosary. So it's a beautiful Sunday morning. We're on our way to church. As we get close to the church, there's a bridge that goes over this small river in town. Now, to cross this bridge, the walkway is not real wide. Like two people can walk past each other, but it's pretty tight. So we are approaching this bridge on the east side. And I see on the west side, there's a woman and her daughter walking these two pretty large dogs. Okay. Now, 2 weeks ago, I was out hiking. Okay, so I've been doing my what I call the ruck and rosary. So I've been putting on a rucksack, ruck around town, pray my rosary. Well, last week, a couple weeks ago, I was doing that, and a man stopped me and said, "Hey, see those two ladies there with the dogs? Like they can't control those dogs very well." Well, this same two girls. Okay, so I see them approaching, and I thought, well, am I gonna wait for them? Well, they moved off to the side, so I thought, oh, they're making space for us. That's great. So we start crossing the bridge. My son and I are praying our rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. We're not praying it overly loud, okay, but we're praying it out loud. And I'm wearing a sport coat and a tie. The church is up off to my right. The church bells are ringing to call everyone in town to mass. And so it's pretty clear where we're going. So I'm not saying the woman could hear us praying, but it's clear where we're heading. Well, she's off to the side. And as we cross over the bridge and walk through, the teenage girl kind of turns her back. The dog she's holding is jumping. She kind of turns her back to us, which I thought was odd. And I thought she was just trying to get some leverage, to kind of hold the dog back. But it struck me as sort of bizarre. But we keep walking, and all of a sudden I hear the mother saying something. Now, I assumed at first she was talking to her daughter, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But the further we walked, it occurred to me that I think she's talking to us. And it also occurred to me what she was saying. So I turn and I look at her, and this grown middle aged woman, okay, is looking at me and my 7-year-old son. And over and over, she's saying, Hail Satan, you mother effers. Hail Satan, you mother effers. Hail Satan, you mother effers. Except for she was given the full description. Fellas, I looked at this woman and the reality of what was going on was setting in where it didn't seem like this was real life. Okay, her dogs are jumping. She's saying this to us. There's nothing about where we live that would make you think something like this would ever happen. To be frank with you, when we were walking across the bridge, there's nothing about the way these two looked. They looked like vanilla, middle class, rural white people. Like there was nothing like stood out about them at all. Okay. Very just run of the mill vanilla folks. Okay. I was not prepared for this. And so as I'm thinking, as this is happening, I turn away because she's got these dogs. So I keep walking with my son, and it really kind of sets in what's going on. I turn around. By this point, they're walking across the bridge and they're off their way. So, of course, I'm stopping there and staring at it. My son is kind of oblivious to what was going on. He looks at me and goes, "Dad, are we going to finish the rosary or what?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, just give me a second." Well, we go to Mass. Um, I probably don't need to tell you this, but I had a hard time focusing at Mass. Right? My wife, after Mass, she said, "Oh, what do you think about Father's homily?" Because he had a really good homily. And I said, I don't remember anything he said because my mind was very preoccupied with this interaction. Okay. Well, I thought about this all day on Sunday. I've been thinking about this all week. Okay. And I want to pass some of my reflections on to you. All right. What in the world's going on here? Um, I sent some texts out some buddies I have here in town and just kind of let them know this happened. And they were shocked. They'd never heard of something like this. However, one of my buddies sent me a picture of a middle-aged woman in town, said, "Was this the lady?" Sure enough, it was. And apparently she's had some, let's just say, very negative interactions with people around town. In his words, she doesn't have a whole lot of emotional self-control. So what was going on in this interaction? Well, as far as I can tell, probably three things. Okay. One, maybe she's a legit Satanist of some brand. Okay. Maybe the brand of just an atheistic hedonist type, or maybe a worship of the devil type. That's totally possible with what she was saying. Could be possible that she just has some mental health issues, um, and she needs some help there. Okay. Totally possible. It's also possible that she's just a degenerate, secular, humanist, immoral person that hates religion and the Catholic Church and wanted to make sure I knew that. That's also possible. I don't know for a fact which one of those is true. However, I do think that this interaction I had is representative of our wider culture. And that's what I want to pass on to you guys for your consideration. Okay, let's take the first one. Maybe she was a Satanist. Well, why is that representative of our culture today? It's very clear if you listen to exorcists or you look at studies in religion, there's a rise in the occult, okay, especially among young people. Okay. People are looking for a certain form of spirituality because, especially for young people, secularism just doesn't have the answers anymore. Now, this, of course, has worked in our favor because there's certain aspects of our church that are growing. And sometimes it's working against us where people attach themselves to these satanic occultic type practices. Okay. So this woman's interaction with me was kind of representative of that rise of that. Okay. Second, let's why if it's possible that it's a mental health issue. Well, that's also representative of our wider culture because mental health issues are off the charts, whether it's depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia. I mean, studies come out that increased use of marijuana use is shooting up psychotic episodes through the roof, right? So we have a mental health crisis in America. Okay. And this could have been representative of that. Or maybe she's just a degenerate secular humanist who hates God and hates the Catholic Church. Well, we know that secularism is shot through in our culture. Okay. Guys, we live in an extremely degenerate culture, off the charts. In fact, and I don't know about you guys, but it's hard for me to always appreciate how degenerate our culture is because I grew up in it. I was born in 1981. So I've kind of just grown up in this secular degenerate culture that I don't realize what is possible in communities because it's kind of always been sort of bad. All right. Well, what do we do about this? Well, I, for one, gentlemen, am tired of this. I've had enough of all three of these things. And I don't think I'm alone in that frustration. Okay. And so I want to pass on a couple thoughts to you guys for your consideration, then we'll wrap up for the weekend. All right. First thing, Jesus Christ says in Matthew chapter 8, verse 18 through 20, he said, "All authority on heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always to the close of the age." All right, my first observation. Gentlemen, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to our Lord Jesus Christ. That includes both the ecclesiastical and political realms. In traditional Catholic social teaching, there's two swords, right? You have the sword of coercion with the Catholic Church, the authority of the Catholic Church in spiritual matters, and the sword of the government, the polity, that's also given real authority from God to rule. Okay. It's the two swords. And we see these brought together in Christendom, especially, right? Guys, this idea that there's a separation of church and state is false. Jesus Christ is king over everything. Okay. I was listening to a podcast, First Things podcast, First Things magazine, and Rusty Reno, the editor, was interviewing the Dominican theologian Father Thomas Joseph White, great theologian. Thomas Joseph White at one point and said that he just believes we need to reclaim a public proclamation and defense of doctrines like the Most Holy Trinity, the incarnation of our blessed Lord, and the truth of the Catholic faith. I can't agree with him more. Guys, we need to make a more aggressive stance for Christ and his kingship in this world. And that includes, so we need people to be pushing this narrative, okay, at the level of the national, state, and local, right? We need a public proclamation and defense of Holy Mother Church and the great dogmas of the faith, okay? We need a public defense of all that is true, good, and beautiful. And people that are qualified to do this should be doing so. We need to fan that into flame. We need to be more public in our proclamation. The separation of church and state, that's not a Catholic understanding of things. Okay. The church and state is integrated because Christ is king over both. I want you guys to consider, has God equipped you for that sort of leadership? Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. But we need Catholic men, okay, to take on that mantle of leadership at the national, state, and local levels in government or even just in civic life in general. I'm not saying everybody needs to run for office, but if you're a qualified person, are you speaking and defending the faith publicly? It's my first observation. Second, in order to do this, to represent Christ in the public sphere, we need to build our tribe like I talked about last week. Hebrews 10:24-25. Let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, all the more as you see the day approaching, the day of what? Judgment day approaching. 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore, encourage one another, build each other up, just in what you are doing. Men, we need to build tribes. We live in a hostile, degenerate culture. We need to build outposts of virtue and sanctity and wisdom and holiness. You need to do that in your local parish. One of the reasons my wife and I bought the house where we bought it and the community we bought it is so that we can invest in our local community. But we need to invest in the men that are there. Guys, the reason why we push for St. Joe's Society and Very Christian groups, the reason why I started this, I'm utterly convinced that this is what is desperately needed to rebuild the church today. And you can do it right there in your neighborhood, at your parish, under the leadership of your priest, in your Catholic schools. Okay, but we got to build the tribe and encourage each other. The whole point of these podcasts are to encourage you guys, right? To grow in holiness. All right. Third thought for you. You need to represent Christ in your sphere of influence. Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Romans 12:1. I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Men, answer the call to represent Christ in your sphere of influence. Now, I don't have a whole lot of really specific advice for you to do this. I think this takes discernment. I think you have to judge your talents and your gifts, the circumstances where he's placed you. But guys, all of us are called to be lights for Christ in our world. Okay. All of us have been gifted in ways to bring glory to our Father in heaven through our actions and our words. Okay. We need to offer ourselves as a living sacrifice. We need to find ways to take up space in our culture publicly for a proclamation of the gospel in a way that's suited to us. Okay. Guys, this can look like Eucharistic processions. I know in Cincinnati, where I used to live, I know they have a men's Eucharistic procession tomorrow morning. Okay. If you're in Cincinnati area, Google it and go. Okay. Take up space publicly. Okay. My ruck and rosary, I pray with my full combat rosary. I don't use the little handheld one. I'm not opposed to that, but I use the big one. Well, why? Because it's taking up space in society. It's a small thing to do to represent Christ in the world. Okay. Another thing you may consider, guys, when I talk to people, I talk to God. I don't differentiate how I talk to people on whether they're my Catholic brothers in my parish or other guys that aren't. Okay. It's a simple thing to do, but it opens up conversations. And what I mean by that's this. If my good Catholic friend said, "What are you doing this weekend?" I said, "Well, I got a St. Joe Society meeting in the morning, and then kids got games in the afternoon. I got some chores to do. Sunday, I'm going to hit up mass, and spend some time with the family." If that's what I would say to my Catholic friends, well, when my non-Catholic coworkers and something ask me what I'm doing, I say the same things. What I've noticed is that little non-awkward, because it's not awkward at all. Nobody thinks it's weird that you say that stuff like that. By sharing those things with non-Catholic friends, I have learned over and over again that those little comments let people know what I'm about in a non-offensive, non-aggressive way. And I have found they open up lots of spiritual conversations later. Because when stuff happens, people start saying, well, he's the Catholic guy. And they ask me questions about stuff, or we talk about things. And I've had tons of good conversations in non-confrontational, natural ways. Okay. So I want to encourage you guys, find good ways to represent Christ publicly, because we need to fight back against this Satanism and occultism. We need to fight back against mental health issues in our society, because our society is turning people insane. And we need to fight back against degenerate, secular humanist, modern folk. Okay. But we need to do this with wisdom, with compassion, just like the scriptures tell us. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up my thoughts there today. Men, fight the good fight. It's a degenerate culture, but Christ is king over all. We win in the end, and we can win a lot of victories in the meantime. So hope you guys have a blessed weekend. I'll see you next time. God bless.